The moment you awaken, the world does not roll out a golden carpet for you. It hands you mirrors, and some of those mirrors will show you a face you've never met before, a truth you've never dared to see, and a loneliness you've never had the courage to name. When the fog lifts for the first time, it is not a parade that greets you. It is the sudden awareness that the people around you are still wandering in the mist. They laugh, they cry, they dream, but you can see, perhaps for the first time, that much of it is built on illusions. And that sight, my dear, is not always a blessing in the beginning. It feels like standing in a room full of voices and realizing you no longer speak their language. You can hear the words, but the meanings have shifted. The conversations that once made you feel connected now sound like echoes of a world you no longer belong to. The first year after awakening holds a strange quietness, not because life has gone silent, but because the noise no longer enters your heart the way it used to. You watch friends chase after victories that you know will not fill them. You watch loved ones fight for battles that were never theirs to begin with, and you find yourself wanting to reach out to shake them gently and say, "There's more. There's another way. Don't you see?" But they don't see. And you learn, slowly and painfully, that sight is not something you can hand to another. They must open their eyes in their own time, in their own way, under their own sky. This is where the loneliness begins. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being unloved, but the kind that blooms when your truth no longer matches the world you inhabit. It is the loneliness of the traveler who has crossed a border into a land few know exists. And when they return to tell the tale, the village smiles politely, but goes back to tending their fields. You stand at the edge of their lives, knowing that you can walk among them, but cannot fully return to who you were before. You will feel this loneliness in the most unexpected places, in a room full of people you adore, during conversations that used to light you up, even in moments of celebration. It is as if part of you is standing outside of the moment, watching it all from a higher vantage, unable to step back down. You might try to push this feeling away. You might busy yourself with noise, with work, with company, just to forget. But when the room empties and the night grows still, the awareness settles on your shoulders again. I see differently now, and I cannot unsee. This seeing comes with a cost. It costs you the comfort of belonging without question. It costs you the bliss of ignorance. Before, you could sit in a circle of familiar chatter and lose yourself in the warmth of agreement. Now you notice the unspoken fears behind their jokes, the desperate hunger behind their plans, the quiet ache in their smiles. You see the pain they do not name, the dreams they do not dare, the masks they wear so well they've forgotten their own faces. And while your love for them may grow deeper, it also grows heavier, because love, once it sees, cannot pretend. There is also a peculiar ache in realizing that your own awakening will not instantly awaken those you love. You may try to share your new vision, wrapping it in the most beautiful words you can find, but you will discover that no amount of speaking can open a heart that is not ready. Some will listen and nod, others will dismiss it with a laugh, and a few may even push you away, not out of malice, but because your light exposes shadows they are not ready to face. You will need to learn to let them be, to love them without dragging them into the fire that transformed you. And here is another truth no one tells you. In the first year, you will doubt yourself because of this loneliness. You will wonder if perhaps you are imagining things, if maybe the sleep you left behind was safer. There will be moments when you long for the warmth of the crowd, the ease of agreement, the steady rhythm of walking in step with everyone else. You will miss the days when your questions were small, when your truths fit neatly into the boxes the world handed you, And yet, each time you consider returning, you find that the door has locked behind you. The old world no longer fits, not because it has changed, but because you have. This loneliness will test you. It will tempt you to shrink, to dim your light so you can stand in the comfort of others without feeling the weight of difference. But the soul cannot unknow the expanse it has seen. No matter how softly you speak or how still you stand, the truth will radiate from you. And in time, you will learn that this is not a burden to be hidden, but a beacon to be carried. Yet in the first year, that understanding feels far away. For now, you walk the narrow bridge between worlds, one foot in the familiar, the other in the unknown. Some days you will stumble. Some days you will wish you had never opened your eyes. But then in a quiet moment, perhaps walking alone at dusk or staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, you will feel the vastness of what you now hold. And in that vastness, there will be a strange, fierce gratitude. Because even in your loneliness, you will know you are alive in a way you never were before. This kind of seeing strips away more than it gives at first. It takes your illusions, your false comforts, your unquestioned beliefs, but it gives you something that cannot be bought or borrowed. It gives you yourself. And though that self may feel like a small companion against the backdrop of an unchanged world, it is enough to carry you forward. In time, you will find others who see too. You will meet them in unexpected places. A shared glance, a sentence that rings like a bell, a silence that feels like home. Until then, you learn to walk with your own company, to let your solitude become the fertile ground where your deeper life begins. The first year after awakening is not just the year of seeing, it is the year of letting go. And not the gentle, graceful kind of letting go that poets wrap in silk and candlelight. No, this letting go is a burial. It is the pulling of roots from soil you once called home. It is the dismantling of rooms you decorated with years of habit and love. It is the sudden realization that what once made you feel safe now feels like a cage. The comforts you once clung to begin to dissolve in your hands. Old routines that used to ground you now feel like chains on your ankles. Conversations that once gave you belonging now feel hollow in your mouth. You try to walk through the old doorways, but you find that the hinges groan under a weight you can no longer bear. And yet you hesitate. You stand with your hand on the doorknob, torn between the ache of leaving and the fear of staying. We are creatures of habit, and the familiar has a way of whispering to us in our weakest hours. You will hear its voice. It will tell you that you were happier before. It will remind you of the warmth you felt when you followed the rules everyone else obeyed. It will paint your old life in golden light, editing out the shadows you now cannot unsee. This is how the familiar tries to keep you, by turning your memory into a lullaby that makes you forget the bars around your bed. And here lies the hardest part. Not everything you must release was bad. Some of it was good, beautiful even. Some of it held you when you could not hold yourself. Some of it gave you joy so deep you thought it would last forever. But awakening is a fire, and fire does not discriminate between the rotten wood and the sturdy oak. If it cannot stand in truth, it will burn, and you will be left holding ashes where once there was a home. There will be friendships that wilt without warning, not because anyone stopped loving, but because the soil that fed them no longer nourishes your roots. There will be passions you no longer feel in your bones, even though they once lit up your entire sky. You will set down certain dreams, not because you failed to reach them, but because you finally see they were never truly yours. They were given to you by a world that did not know who you really were. This is the death of familiar comforts. It is the slow, aching process of peeling yourself away from a life you built with your own hands, only to realize that it was never built for the person you have now become. You will mourn the loss of things you thought you would carry forever. And in that mourning, you will discover that grief is not always for the broken. It is often for the beautiful that could not make the journey with you. In the quiet moments, this grief will ache like a phantom limb. You will reach for the old rituals without thinking. Text the person you used to tell everything to. Drive to the places that once gave you peace. Repeat the patterns that made you feel at home. But when you arrive, you will feel it instantly. The fit is wrong. The energy no longer welcomes you. It's like trying to step into a coat you outgrew. It may still be lovely, but it no longer warms you in the same way. You may resist at first. You may try to stitch the old and the new together, to keep at least one corner of the familiar as a shelter against the winds of change. But awakening is not a partial transformation. It is not the kind of river you can cross with one foot on each shore. The moment you truly awaken, you are swept into the current, and every attempt to cling to the old bank will only exhaust you. And here's the quiet cruelty of it. The world will not understand why you are letting go. People will tell you that you've changed, and they won't always mean it as a compliment. They will ask you to explain yourself, to justify your release, to prove that your leaving is not a betrayal. But there are no words that can translate the inner shift into a language they are ready to hear. So you will learn to walk away silently, carrying the weight of what they cannot yet know. The death of familiar comforts feels like a kind of exile. You wander through the spaces between the old world and the new, stripped of your previous identity, unsure of what will replace it. And though your spirit may whisper that this shedding is necessary, your human heart will ache for the things you've buried. You will miss the handholds, the landmarks, the predictable rhythm of the life you once lived. But there is a strange truth about comfort. It can be a gentle prison. It can hold you so sweetly that you forget you were meant to run. When awakening comes, it breaks that spell, even if it must do so violently. It will pry your fingers from what you thought was safety until your hands are empty and trembling. It will leave you standing in a vast unknown with nothing but yourself. And though that emptiness may terrify you, it is also the first taste of freedom. At first, you will mourn more than you celebrate. You will see the flames more than you see the clearing they leave behind. But one morning, perhaps without realizing it, you will take a breath and notice that the air is different, cleaner, lighter. You will look down at your hands and see that they are free. And even though you still ache for what you lost, a small, quiet part of you will whisper, "Maybe I was never meant to stay where I was." This is the secret no one tells you. Awakening does not just give, it takes. It takes until you are certain there is nothing left to lose. But in that space where the old has died and the new has not yet arrived, something holy begins to grow. And though you cannot see it yet, it will become the truest home you have ever known. The first year after awakening turns the mirror into both a judge and a witness. Before, it was a place to check your hair, to adjust your smile, to make sure you were presentable for the world. But now, the glass has teeth. It doesn't just show you your face, it shows you every face you've ever worn. It shows you the masks you once put on so easily that you forgot they were never your skin. And standing there, you realize that this is the first time you are truly looking at yourself, without costume, without script, without the practiced expressions that used to keep you safe. At first, it is almost unbearable. You see the younger versions of yourself, the one who stayed silent when you should have spoken, the one who let someone else's opinion decide your worth, the one who smiled politely while something inside you was breaking. You see the places where you were small, where you chose comfort over courage, where you believed the lies you were told because they were easier than the truth you suspected. And every one of those moments stares back at you through your own eyes, as if to say, "We are still here. We are a part of you." It is tempting to look away, to find distraction in work, in people, in anything that will keep you from having to stand in that stillness. But the mirror waits. It knows you will return because the journey you have begun demands it. Awakening does not let you turn away from yourself. It drags you into the deepest corners of your own being and insists you look. And it is not just your flaws that come forward. It is your strength too. You see the survivor, the fighter, the one who endured when you didn't think you could. You see the moments when you spoke truth, even though your voice shook, when you chose the harder road because something in your bones refused to bow to falsehood. You see the person who has walked through fire after fire and still stands here breathing. But that strength feels heavier now because you know it is not a gift, it is a responsibility. You cannot see yourself so clearly and then return to betraying that self. This is where the weight comes in. Awakening strips away the excuses you once used to soften the truth about yourself. You can no longer tell yourself you didn't have a choice when you know you did. You can no longer hide behind ignorance when the light has already reached your eyes. You can no longer pretend that the harm you do to yourself is harmless. The mirror shows you not only who you have been, but who you could be, and it demands that you choose. There is a kind of grief in this seeing. You mourn for the times you abandoned yourself, for the years you lived as someone smaller than you truly are. And yet, there is also a fierce tenderness in it, because even as you see your past mistakes, you understand now why you made them. You see the fear in your younger eyes, the need to belong, the desperation to be loved, even if it meant losing parts of yourself. And you can hold that version of you now, not in judgment, but in compassion. Still, the compassion does not erase the weight. Each morning, the mirror asks, "What will you do today with the truth you carry? Will you live it or will you set it down because it feels too heavy?" And there will be days when you set it down. Days when you choose silence over confrontation, when you hide behind an old mask because it's easier than standing exposed. And when you return to the mirror after those days, it will not scold you, but it will not lie to you either. It will show you the cost. In the first year, you will come to understand that self-knowledge is not a gentle companion. It is a relentless one. It will sit beside you in the night and whisper reminders of the promises you made to yourself. It will not let you rest in false comfort. It will not let you forget who you are becoming. And this is the blessing and the curse of awakening. The more you see, the less you can bear to live in contradiction. There is another truth the mirror reveals, one that is perhaps harder to face than your own flaws. It shows you the beauty you've been running from. It shows you the power in your gaze, the light in your being, the sheer, unrepeatable miracle of your existence. And that too can feel unbearable. Because to see your own beauty is to realize that every time you have settled for less, every time you have hidden yourself, every time you have allowed someone else to define you, you have betrayed something sacred. You may find yourself asking, "Why didn't I see it sooner?" The answer is simple. You couldn't. You were not ready. The life you lived before, with all its comforts and illusions, served its purpose. It brought you to this moment, to this mirror, to this clarity. And now that you are here, you cannot go back to seeing yourself as anything less than whole. The weight of your own reflection is not meant to crush you. It is meant to anchor you. It keeps you from drifting back into the fog. It reminds you, day after day, that you are accountable to yourself first. And in the first year, when the world still tempts you to return to sleep, That anchor is what keeps you standing in the truth, even when it is lonely, even when it is hard. The mirror will not always be a place of reckoning. Over time, it will become a place of meeting, a place where you return not to judge, but to greet the person you are becoming. But in the first year, it is heavy work. It is the slow, patient process of learning to look yourself in the eye without flinching. It is the courage to see not only what is, but what could be. And it is the quiet vow made without ceremony that you will not turn away again. There will come a point in that first trembling year when you will think to yourself, maybe it would be easier if I hadn't woken up at all. It will not be a dramatic declaration, but a quiet whisper that slips into your mind when the loneliness is deep, when the weight of truth presses on your chest, when the world you once knew stands shimmering in the distance, calling you back. The temptation does not arrive in the form of a demon. It arrives as an old friend. It comes wearing the scent of the life you once knew, the rhythm of the days when you didn't question so much, when you belonged without effort, when comfort was not something you had to wrestle for. It whispers promises, the laughter you used to share, the approval that used to steady you, the sweetness of being understood, or at least of thinking you were understood. It tempts you not because it is truly better, but because it is familiar. And familiar has a way of painting itself in gold when you are weary. You will remember how easy it felt to walk among those who saw the world the way you once did. You will miss the ease of conversations where you didn't have to filter your truth. You will ache for the warmth of belonging, even if you now know that belonging was built on an illusion. And sometimes that ache will feel heavier than the truth you fought so hard to find. In these moments, the old world becomes a mirage, a place you convince yourself was kinder, softer, safer. You will forget the restlessness that lived in your bones back then, the quiet hunger for something more, the sense that you were walking through life asleep. You will remember only the good, as if the awakening itself was the cause of your unease, and not the false life you left behind. This is how the temptation works. It distorts memory until you believe the prison was a sanctuary. There will be times when the pull is so strong, you will start to retrace your steps. You will soften your voice so it doesn't carry the sharpness of truth. You will laugh at jokes you no longer find funny. You will swallow your questions, tuck away your knowing, dim your light just enough to blend back into the crowd. And for a brief moment, you will feel the relief of it, the way a tired traveler feels when they lay down their pack. But the relief will not last. Sooner or later, a conversation will strike the wrong chord. A lie will scrape against the walls of your spirit, and you will remember. You will remember that once your eyes have seen, they cannot unsee. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot force your soul back into the shape it was before the awakening stretched it wide. And so, the momentary comfort turns sour because you realize it is not true comfort at all. It is the numbing before the ache returns. This cycle may repeat more than once in that first year. You will test yourself, thinking maybe you can walk both paths, be awake when it serves you, and asleep when it is too heavy to bear. But awakening does not work like that. It is not a mask you can remove and replace. Once truth takes root in you, it will rise up in every room, in every conversation, in every choice you make, and it will demand to be honored, even if it costs you the safety of the old life. The temptation to return is not just about comfort. It is about the longing to be understood without explanation. In the old world, you spoke the same language as everyone else. You shared the same dreams, followed the same rules, and because of that, you were not questioned. In the awakened world, your words land differently. People tilt their heads, unsure of what you mean. They may misinterpret you, judge you, or simply turn away. And there is a deep part of you that longs for the simplicity of being known without the weight of translating your soul. But here is the quiet truth. You were never fully known there. They knew the version of you that fit the story they were told, the one who walked the lines they recognized. They did not know the full depth, the unspoken questions, the vast hunger for truth that now burns openly in your chest. And to return to that would not be to return to being understood. It would be to return to being half seen. When the temptation rises, it often comes during the still hours, when you are tired of holding yourself upright in the winds of change. You will lie awake and imagine what it would be like to go back, to silence the questions, to close your eyes, to pretend you do not notice the cracks in the walls. You will picture yourself moving through the world with that same easy rhythm, unburdened by the responsibility of living in truth. And for a moment, it will seem almost possible. But the body remembers, the soul remembers. You will feel the hollowness return even in your imagination. You will remember the nights when you lay in bed with a life that looked whole but felt empty. You will remember the small betrayals, the times you said yes when you meant no, the times you agreed to a truth that wasn't yours, the times you swallowed yourself just to fit. And in remembering, the pull to return will begin to loosen, not because the temptation fades, but because you realize the cost. The first year is where you learn that staying awake is not about never feeling the temptation to return. It is about refusing to surrender to it. It is about standing in the middle of the ache, the loneliness, the longing, and choosing not to trade your truth for comfort. It is about trusting that the unfamiliar road ahead will offer you something real, even if you cannot yet see it. There will be days when you stumble, when you catch yourself halfway back to the old ways before you notice. Forgive yourself for those moments. They are not proof of failure. They are proof that the old life still calls to you because you lived there for so long. But each time you choose not to answer, each time you turn your gaze forward instead of back, you strengthen the part of you that knows the difference between safety and freedom. And one day the temptation will still be there, but it will feel lighter, like an echo instead of a command. You will look back, not with longing, but with gratitude for what you learned there. You will see that the old life was not a mistake, only a stepping stone. And when it calls to you, you will be able to smile and say, I remember you, but I am not coming back. At first, awakening strips you bare. It feels less like gaining something and more like losing everything you thought you could lean on. The old comforts are gone. The familiar paths are closed. The people you once leaned on may not understand you anymore. You feel like you are standing in the middle of a wide, empty field with nothing to shield you from the wind. Strength does not come rushing in to fill that space. It arrives slowly, so slowly that you might not notice it at first. In the beginning, you walk trembling. Every step feels unsure. You question your choices. You second-guess your voice. You replay old conversations in your head, wondering if you've made a mistake in choosing this new life. You search for the anchor you once had in other people's approval, but it is gone. And in its absence, there is only you, raw, exposed, unsteady. It is in this vulnerable place that strength begins its quiet work. Not the kind of strength that roars or flashes like lightning, but the kind that hums low and steady, almost beneath your hearing. It begins with small decisions. The morning you wake up tired, but still choose to show up for yourself. The conversation where you speak your truth, even though your voice shakes. The moment you say no to something that would have kept you small, even though it costs you someone's favor. Each choice is like placing a single stone beneath your feet. At first, the stones are scattered and uneven. You still stumble, still lose your balance, still feel like the wind could knock you over. But slowly, steadily, the stones form a path. And each time you step on one, you realize it is your own hand that placed it there. Strength is not born in the absence of fear. It is born in the presence of fear and the decision to keep going anyway. You will not wake up one morning feeling unshakable. Instead, you will look back weeks or months later and realize you've walked through storms you would have once avoided, and you are still standing. You will notice that the words of others which used to pierce you now land more softly. You will feel the space between the event and your reaction widen, giving you room to choose your response instead of being swept away by it. There will be days when you do not feel strong at all, days when you break down, when you doubt yourself, when you want nothing more than to crawl back into the comfort of the old life. But those days too are part of the birth, because every time you fall apart and then rise again, you teach yourself that you can. And that knowledge is worth more than the illusion of never falling. Strength also changes the way you carry yourself, not in a way the world always notices. There is no sudden transformation into a figure everyone admires, but in the way you notice yourself. You stand a little taller, you breathe a little deeper, you stop apologizing for existing. You no longer shrink your words to fit someone else's comfort, nor do you inflate them to demand their attention. You begin to trust that you have a place here and that your worth is not dependent on the nods or applause of others. This kind of strength is quiet. It is not about becoming harder. It is about becoming truer. You do not need to armor yourself with coldness or distance. You do not need to fight every battle to prove your resilience. Instead, you begin to understand that true strength is knowing when to stand firm and when to let go. It is knowing which storms require you to plant your feet and which ones are better met by bending with the wind. In the first year, there will be moments when you surprise yourself. You will find yourself in situations that once would have undone you, and you will respond with clarity instead of panic. You will face the disapproval of someone you care about and remain grounded in your choice. You will sit in your own company without rushing to fill the silence. And each time you do, a small, quiet voice inside will whisper, "See, you are not who you were before." The slow birth of inner strength also brings with it a new kind of peace, not the peace of everything being easy, but the peace of knowing you can handle it when it isn't. You stop needing the world to stay still in order for you to feel steady. You stop needing people to behave the way you expect in order to remain calm. You begin to trust yourself in ways you never did before, because you have proof now, not in theory, but in practice, that you can survive the things you once thought would break you. It is important to understand that this strength does not make life effortless. The winds will still blow, the losses will still sting, the temptations will still come, but with each passing day, you become less like a leaf tossed in the air and more like a tree whose roots dig deeper with every season. You might sway, you might creak, you might shed leaves and stand bare for a time, but you do not fall. And the most beautiful part is that this strength becomes self-sustaining. In the early days, you needed reminders. You needed to hear someone else tell you that you could keep going. But as the months pass, you begin to carry that reminder inside you. You hear it in your own voice. You feel it in your own bones. You no longer need to borrow someone else's faith in you because you have built your own. This slow birth is not glamorous. No one will see the exact moment it happens. It will not be marked on a calendar or announced in a crowd, but one day you will find yourself in a situation that would have shattered you before, and instead of breaking, you will breathe. You will choose your next step with steady hands. You will walk forward without waiting for the world to catch you. And in that moment, you will know you are no longer merely surviving. You are standing in your own strength, and it is enough to carry you anywhere you choose to go. Becoming is not a single moment. It is not a mountaintop where the air clears and the rest of life stretches before you in a neat golden path. Becoming is 1,000 small risings, 1,000 quiet endings, 1,000 steps you didn't think you could take until you did. It is the unfolding of your truest self in ways you could not have predicted when you first began. In the early days after awakening, you may have imagined that there would be a point when the struggle would end and you would finally arrive, polished, steady, and whole. But becoming teaches you that there is no such fixed destination. Instead, it reveals that you are meant to keep growing, keep stretching, keep discovering parts of yourself you didn't know were there. You are not a statue carved in stone. You are a river, always moving, always reshaping the land it touches. The beauty of becoming lies in its honesty. It refuses to let you stay in the masks you once wore. It invites you to drop the act, to stand in the truth of your imperfections, and to see them not as flaws, but as the fingerprints of your humanity. You begin to understand that the cracks in you are not signs of failure. They are the openings where light can enter. And so you start living differently. You no longer chase perfection like a finish line. You no longer measure your worth in other people's applause. Instead, you lean into the rhythm of your own life. You make choices that align with who you are becoming, even when they confuse others. You leave spaces where old versions of yourself would have rushed to fill the silence. You let some questions remain unanswered because you trust that not everything is meant to be resolved right away. Becoming also changes the way you see the world. Where once you may have looked for beauty in the grand, the glittering, the spectacular, now you begin to see it in the small and ordinary. The way morning light spills across the kitchen table, the way a deep breath can change the course of a difficult moment, the way you feel your own heart steady when you choose kindness over retaliation. Life begins to reveal its richness in moments you might have overlooked before. There is a sacredness to this kind of beauty because it is born from truth. It does not depend on anything staying the same. You have walked through the loss of old comforts, the weight of your own reflection, the temptation to turn back, the slow birth of strength, and you have emerged with eyes that can see the miracle of simply being here. You understand now that every breath is a beginning, every ending holds a seed, every setback contains the possibility of a new path. The sacred beauty of becoming also lives in the way you carry your wounds. You do not pretend they never happened, nor do you let them define you. Instead, you carry them like weathered stones in your pocket, weighty but smoothed by the years, their edges no longer sharp enough to cut you. They have shaped your hands, your heart, your voice. They have made you gentler in some places, fiercer in others. And because of them, you know how to recognize the quiet pain in someone else's eyes and offer them the kind of presence you once needed. There will be moments when you catch yourself laughing and realize it comes from a deeper place than before, a place untouched by performance, born instead from genuine joy. There will be moments when you feel a stillness inside that does not depend on the world's noise being silenced. You will see that you can stand in chaos and still be rooted. You will notice that you can be alone without feeling abandoned. These are not small changes. They are the markers of transformation. Becoming is also about learning to love yourself in ways you once thought impossible. Not the kind of love that only shows up when you've achieved something or look your best, but the steady kind that stays even on your lowest days. You learn to speak to yourself with the gentleness you once reserved for others. You forgive yourself for the mistakes you made when you didn't know better. You stop punishing yourself for the times you stumbled. And with every act of compassion toward yourself, you make it easier to extend that same grace to the world around you. Over time, you realize that the sacred beauty of becoming is not about transforming into someone else. It is about shedding what was never truly yours. The roles you played to be accepted, the versions of yourself you built to survive, the habits you carried because they felt safe. As they fall away, what is left is not a stranger. It is the self you were always meant to meet. And perhaps the most humbling part of becoming is knowing it never ends. Just as you settle into this new skin, life will call you into another layer of growth. Just as you feel steady, something will challenge you to expand again. But you no longer fear this. You no longer see change as a threat to your stability. Instead, you see it as the pulse of life itself, the sign that you are still alive, still evolving, still awake. One day, without even realizing it, you will stand at a window or walk down a familiar street or sit in the quiet of your own home, and you will feel it, the soft, steady hum of a life that is wholly your own. You will not need to prove it to anyone. You will not need to announce it. It will simply be there in the way you move, the way you speak, the way you inhabit your own skin. This is the sacred beauty of becoming, knowing that you are not finished, and yet right here, right now, you are already enough. The first year after awakening is not the paradise you were promised. It is harder, sharper, and lonelier than the sleep you left behind. But it is also the year you begin to truly live. It is where your voice stops trembling, where your steps stop waiting for permission, where your heart beats to its own music and you dance, even when no one else hears it. If you can survive that year, you will never again mistake comfort for peace, and you will never again trade truth for the safety of dreams.